Alright, man, welcome back to another video, and we get a pretty interesting one today, man. We're going to be discussing the Boeing 737 MAX. Now, the Boeing 737 MAX is a plane that was involved in two horrific plane crashes, taking the lives of everyone on board, totaling for about 350 total casualties in both crashes. Um, and yeah, essentially I'm going to break down, or I'm not really going to break down. We're going to watch videos of a guy breaking down what happened, why it happened, and everything else above it. Alright, I got two videos set up here. I got to rewind that one. We're going to be doing this one, the real reason Boeing's new plane crashed. This is going to be discussing the actual system that they added, that Boeing secretly added into the plane without telling anybody, without telling the pilots or anything. And then this one's going to be covering everything else regarding to it. Alright, so let's just do this one first.
This
Start
is
off
an
with
airplane
Box's video.
engine. It's sitting in a field in Bishaftu, Ethiopia, part of the wreckage of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, which crashed on March 10, 2019. 157 people died. This was just a few months after another flight, Lion Air 610, crashed in Indonesia and killed 189 people. These two flights were operating the same plane, the Boeing 737 MAX 8. And its engine is the key to understanding why this particular plane has caused so many problems.
No, it's not, I don't know why they say that. It's not even the engine.
But there's nothing actually wrong with this engine.
Yeah, I don't know why
In
they
fact,
they
airplane
actually say that.
manufacturers raced to put them on their new planes. That's where the problem started.
It's not actually the engine. It's a sorry, excuse me. So essentially, when Boeing was dropping this plane, right? They had the 737, which is the predecessor to the 737 Max. Great plane, right? When they dropped the 737 Max, they dropped it as this plane will need no, like, pilots will need no extra training to go from the 737 to the 737 Max, right? But which that was their big selling point. But they also added in a secret system called the MCAS system, which we will be learning about here in a second. That is absolutely fucking horrifying. Didn't tell anybody about it. No pilots knew about it. Nobody knew about it. It was basically like a little sub note in under a previous system or some shit.
The two biggest airplane manufacturers in the world are Airbus and Boeing, and they have a fierce rivalry. If one of them can offer a better plane, the other could lose a lot of money. That's exactly what was about to happen in 2010. Airbus announced that they would update their most popular model, the A320, a single-aisle airplane that services many domestic flights. You've probably been on one.
I've not. I don't fly.
For this new plane, Airbus had a big update. It would have a new kind of engine. It was much larger than the previous engine, but it would make the plane 15% more fuel efficient. And just as importantly, this upgrade wouldn't change the plane that much. A pilot could walk into the new model with little additional training and be on their way. It was called the A320neo, and it would save airlines a lot of money.
That's the big thing, is the pilot could walk into the thing with no additional
This was a
training.
problem for Boeing. To compete with Airbus, Boeing's obvious move was to upgrade the engine on their single-aisle plane, the 737. But there was one issue. Here's a sketch of the 737 next to the Airbus A320. Notice how the 737 is lower to the ground than the A320. This meant Airbus could slide a new engine under the wing of their A320, but there wasn't enough room under the wing of the Boeing 737. But a few months later, Boeing's product development head had big news. He said, "We figured out a way to get a big enough engine under the wing." Their solution was to move up the engine on the wing so that it would be slightly higher, and it would fit on their 737s. Here's a promotional video of that updated 737 in the air. You can actually see that the top of the engine is above the wing. Boeing called this model the 737 MAX. And just like Airbus with the A320, Boeing said that their new plane was so similar to its predecessor that pilots would only need minimal additional training. The 737 MAX became the hottest selling plane on the market. And it helped Boeing keep up with Airbus.
Damn, look at that. See, in 2011, Airbus torched Boeing.
Except moving the engine up on the 737 had a side effect. When the 737 MAX was in full thrust, like during takeoff, the nose tended to point too far upward, which could lead to a stall. This was a problem because these planes were supposed to behave exactly like the old ones. So Boeing came up with a workaround. Instead of re-engineering the planes, they installed software that automatically pushed the nose downward if the pilot flew the plane at too high of an angle. They called it the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System,
MCAS.
or MCAS. But because Boeing
This
was
is
selling the
horrifying,
737 MAX as pretty much the same plane as the 737, they didn't highlight the new MCAS system.
They said nothing about it. Not one fucking word about it.
Many pilots only got a 2-hour iPad course before entering the cockpit for the first time. And the training material didn't mention the MCAS software. In 2018,
Wasn't even in the manual.
several American pilots complained to the federal government that the 737 MAX was suddenly nosing down. On October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Jakarta. In the flight report, which shows the plane's altitude over time, you can see that the plane was in full thrust during takeoff. But at a certain point, the nose of the plane kept lurching downward. The pilots couldn't figure out why this was happening. The captain asked the first officer to check the quick reference handbook. They couldn't find the solution. The pilots continued to fight with the MCAS. The plane struggled to gain altitude. Reports show it was likely because the computer was getting incorrect sensor data, pushing the plane toward the earth below. 12 minutes after takeoff, the plane crashed into the Java Sea.
Jesus Christ, man.
In the Ethiopia crash, the report shows that the pilots were actually able to disable the MCAS, but it was too late to overcome the malfunctioning MCAS sensors. For now, nearly every 737 MAX 8 in service has been grounded.
Yeah, okay, so, that wound up leading, Trump to ground every single 737 MAX in 2019, which is fucking horrifying. So that's the first little thing. This didn't show the actual operation of the MCAS itself and what it does. So let's watch this video now. That first one got a nice little start to the video though. A nice little introduction, rather.
So we're on the takeoff roll now. We're just passing 100 knots, and at the moment everything is fine.
So this is gonna actually go into a little more depth of the system and the flights.
737 pilot Chris Brady is about to take me on a terrifying flight.
Approaching the rotate speed. There we go. So just easing back on the elevators by moving the stick back, and you see the aircraft becomes airborne.
In this simulator, we're replicating the 12 minutes pilots on board the Indonesian Lion Air Flight 610 experienced before crashing into the sea in October last year.
Now the flaps have retracted. This is the point at which the MCAS would come alive.
In a brand new aircraft, the Boeing 737 MAX, a computer flight control system called MCAS, hidden in the plane and unknown to pilots, suddenly activates.
Look what it does. It just drives the nose straight down.
1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000,
And for 10 seconds, this happens.
5,000, 6,000, 7,000.
There's nothing you can do about it.
I'm stopping there because that's already looking very uncomfortable.
So what it actually
and I'm going to try and pull back out.
What it actually does is it raises this back propeller. I should have shown it in the other one. I don't even know if it's called a propeller, but that's what I'm calling it. It raises this back propeller, right? There's a little thing on it, right? That it allows to go and go up. And by raising it ever so slightly, it causes the wind or whatever the fuck to push the nose of the plane down. And that's what it was doing. And the system was malfunctioning and broken, right? So it just kept fucking doing it. And it just kept pushing the nose down. It's like, it's fucking horrifying. That's so horrifying.
1,000, 2,000, 3,000,
That's what's
4,000,
happening here.
5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. I'm stopping there because that's already looking very uncomfortable.
Wow.
And I'm going to try and pull back out of that. I'm going to have to use trim to help me out of it. Okay. So you can see how dramatic that was.
That's happening irrespective of anything you're trying to do. That's just happened whether you liked it or not.
Yes.
MCAS has the ability to automatically and repeatedly take control of the plane. And on this Lion Air flight, it did just that.
Perfect.
The computer program had malfunctioned and allowed the pilots just 5-second intervals to regain control.
So it goes on for 10, meaning it pushes you down for 10, and then for 5 seconds it goes off and you can pull up, and then it goes back on for 10.
So I now think the problem's gone. I think the problem's solved. But what we don't know is behind the scenes, in the black boxes, they're counting to 5, and as soon as they count to reach 5,
It happens again.
back down we go again. Into misbehaving, and you look out the window and, oh my God, you're in a dive again.
It's got a mind of its own.
Its logic is programmed 10 seconds on, 5 seconds off. And we don't know that because we as the pilots have never been told. It was never in our manuals.
Again and again, Chris Brady fights the rogue MCAS system, but it's a losing battle.
It will start to trim down. So let's go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you see that we're now in a very, very steep dive.
Wow. I'm not a pilot,
Absolutely horrifying.
but that makes me almost sick to think about. I mean,
Me too. Me too. It's such a horrible situation to be in. It's unimaginable.
610 lost contact with air traffic control after crashing into waters of the...
At 6:32 a.m. local time, Lion Air 610 crashes at extraordinary speed,
Friends of those on board appeared helpless and inconsolable.
killing all 189 men, women and children on board.
Jesus Christ, man.
We learned that there was a system on the aircraft which we had no knowledge of. It wasn't in our books. We hadn't been trained to it. It was absolute blindfold in a dark forest for us.
5 months later, despite Boeing's assurances its new jet was safe, another 737 MAX crashes into the mountains
Same
of
exact thing.
Ethiopia.
The same exact fucking situation.
Pilots fighting to the death to take control. At 8:38 a.m. on March the 10th, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 takes off from Addis Ababa. It's considered one of the world's safest airlines. But shortly after takeoff, Ethiopian Flight 302 is suddenly out of control. A critical
Right when those
sensor
flaps go
sending information to the plane's new flight control system called MCAS has malfunctioned. MCAS thinks the aircraft is in a stall.
I don't know if you could saw
MCAS information to
or
the
I don't know if you
plane's
could see
new
that.
flight control system
this. Can't slightly pause it quick enough.
control.
So this right here, right? You see how this can go up or down? What this system does, right? Which I mean, we already kind of learned about it, but it just shifts this thing up, and once it gets pushed all the way up top, it causes the airflow to just fucking push the thing down.
System called MCAS
Absolutely
has
horrifying.
malfunctioned. MCAS
Absolutely
thinks the
fucking
aircraft
horrifying.
is in a stall and literally takes over the controls, pitching the plane into a steep dive.
Holy shit, man.
It's almost identical to what happened to Lion Air Flight 610 just 5 months earlier in Indonesia. But Boeing had since assured pilots further disasters were avoidable as long as they followed the safety checklist.
What Boeing described to us was that simply you go to a known checklist, but what they failed to recognize is that this was a complex, intense emergency because the airplane's telling you you're about to stall. So that's happening right after takeoff, within meters of the Earth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yeah, that's not good.
In this flight simulator, British 737 pilot Chris Brady again replicates what's happening in the cockpit.
Each time you notice we're getting lower.
The Ethiopian pilots would have been trying to follow Boeing's checklist. But what they didn't
Jesus
know
Christ,
was that
dude.
the MCAS system will repeatedly turn on and off. It means they have only 5 seconds of control before MCAS overrides the plane, forcing it to nosedive.
If you were to time how long it would take me to find runaway stabilizer on this list and go to it in the book, page 9.9.
As you're nosediving,
And it's barely enough time for the
Jesus
pilots
fucking
to consult
Christ,
the
dude.
Boeing checklist, which can only be found in a paper manual.
Okay, so that's taken me, what, about 2 or 3 seconds? Mm-hmm. So I've only
Dude, a little longer than 2 or 3 seconds, homie. It's been like 10 seconds.
now got 2 more seconds, potentially, before MCAS comes alive and starts trimming me down.
for me, this
This
is
is so
all
horrifying,
outrageous
dude.
on so many levels.
It is.
Yeah, it's
These are
absolutely
unintended
egregious, of course.
consequences of an
Of course, it's absolutely
ill-thought-out
egregious. Come on.
add-on that was necessary.
There would have been calamitous noise on the flight deck. The aircraft was going faster and faster and faster, so there was a clacker going to tell the crew that they were overspeeding. And it gives you an indication of how overloaded those pilots were. Nothing, even though they tried the checklist, it wasn't working for them.
So this is all happening in seconds. It is a sledgehammer to the head, followed by ball-peen hammers to the forehead, and then comes the chainsaw,
Jesus fucking
what we now know
Christ.
as MCAS. And that chainsaw rips through that cockpit, and it's relentless.
The pilots were literally in a tug of war with their own aircraft.
Yes.
And the aircraft was just powering at a 40-degree nose-down attitude, which would have been terrifying.
6 minutes. They must have realised, oh my God.
Yeah. It is horrifying. Yeah, it's unimaginable what the flight must have been like.
The recreated video
What
is
would
even
the
horrifying
passengers
too,
have
man.
felt in both those flights? Would they have known pretty quickly that things are...
Alright, I don't really want this. Alright, so yeah, that's about it for videos that I wanted to watch for this. Just kind of wanted to bring it to light. I watched Netflix has a great documentary on it. If you want to go watch that, it's called The Downfall of Boeing, I believe. Absolutely great documentary. I watched that yesterday. Yeah, I kind of just wanted to do a nice little, well, I mean, I say nice, but Jesus fucking Christ, a little fucking preview video on this because I found this absolutely horrifying and absolutely egregious, man. All right, well, hopefully have a blessed day, man, and thank you for watching. Deuces, man.